Hello and welcome to the LLG Grapevine podcast. You're listening to Helen McGrath, Head of Public Affairs, and Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor.
Hi everyone.
Now, last week saw some big headlines, but I want to start with the continuing issue of intimidation and abuse against councillors and members of Parliament, which both the LGA Bulletin and BBC coverage highlighted last week. The LGA said that more and more councillors and candidates are being subjected to abuse, threats and public intimidation, whilst the BBC reports that pressure is growing for better legal protection to be introduced to combat an increase in councillor abuse on social media, following reports of fat shaming, homophobic attacks and, quote, threats to burn down your house. The Online Safety Bill, which is currently being discussed in Parliament, is one of the first attempts to have a set of rules about how online platforms should deal with content established in law. Last week, The Guardian reported that the legislation will introduce 3 new online communications offences for individuals, which are sending or posting a message that conveys a threat of serious harm, sending a communication with the intent of causing psychological harm or serious emotional distress, and deliberately sending a false message with the intention of causing harm. As currently set out, sending a threatening message could carry up to a 5-year prison term, with psychological harm up to 2 years, and false communications up to 51 weeks. All indications are that the government is committed to seeing the bill through as speedily as possible. Dennis, what items caught your eye last week?
Well, Helen, this week, levelling up, the forthcoming COVID inquiry and climate change plans are among my news items. So let's begin with my piece on the big news of the week, that levelling up announcement.
Well, there we have it. After much delay, the white paper on levelling up. County and combined authority devolution deals, a whole system change on how government works, 12 new national missions to be given status in law in a new levelling up and regeneration bill, and all to be achieved by 2030. These are the headlines from the announcement last week from Michael Gove as to what levelling up will mean for our sector and beyond for the next decade. The 12 national missions or policy objectives include improved pay, employment and productivity, education, research, and public transport investment. The government will legislate to create a statutory duty upon itself to publish an annual report updating the public on the progress of these missions, with a new Levelling Up Advisory Council providing further support to the process. The white paper is huge and wide-ranging, but as you would expect, there's already been much early critical analysis. Commentators have focused upon the absence of real financial commitments. The problem that the government seeks to solve with its levelling up agenda here is clear. It is the fact that the UK is one of the world's most geographically unequal major economies, and that position has worsened over the past 3 decades. The pledges on spending in the white paper are seen as being rather limited, reflecting the challenges of the current fiscal position. But where a policy mission such as this has actually been achieved, for example in Germany, there have been massive fiscal transfers from rich regions to poor ones, approaching £1.5 trillion or £70 billion per year. Now, nothing similar in scale has been announced so far, and there are suggestions that the Treasury has already cut down the size of the originally proposed commitments when this white paper was in preparation. And of course, you'll have more updates on this levelling up policy from LLG over the coming months.
So watch this space. Now I want to take a look at what's happening for our Welsh members at the moment. So in Wales, the Code of Recommended Practice for Local Authority Publicity is being updated and revised to reflect changes that have taken place since the last code was issued in 2014. The code currently provides guidance on the content, style, distribution and cost of local authority publicity. It's being amended for elections, broadcasting council meetings and communication channels such as the use of social media and other digital platforms. The Standards of Conduct Committee are currently consulting on proposed revisions to the procedure for dealing with complaints against members of the Senedd. The consultation sets out the committee's consideration of the existing procedure and proposals for change with a redrafted procedure in light of the experiences of the 5th Senedd. The redrafted procedure is aimed at providing an idea of how it may look rather than being definitive. Submissions close on the 21st of February. And finally, an announcement by the Minister for Climate Change, Julie James, outlined the intention by the Welsh Government to implement the Renting Homes Wales Act 2016 on the 15th of July 2022. The 2016 Act represents the biggest change to housing law in Wales for decades. Amongst other things, it introduces a 6-month notice requirement for a landlord to end a contract where the contract holder is not at fault. As landlords will not be able to issue such possession notices during the first 6 months of occupation, contract holders will have a minimum security of tenure of 1 year from the date of moving in. My thanks to Janet Hooper, our Welsh Branch Policy Officer, for continuing to update me on matters concerning Wales. Now, Dennis, I understand you've been looking at what council should be doing to prepare for the big COVID inquiry when it comes.
Well, this week I noticed a very interesting article from Bevan Britton on planning for the forthcoming COVID public inquiry. Here's my report.
There's no date for a COVID inquiry yet, nor have its terms of reference actually been set. But Bevan Britton make a powerful case for councils to plan now their approach to what they will want to advocate for their areas in future. They say that it seems likely there will be a number of areas where local authorities, either collectively or individually, will have an important role to play, and government will want to look at our sector in some detail. There may well be some specific local issues which the inquiry wants to look at, but at a more general level, there are a number of issues that the authors say the inquiry is likely to be investigating where local government will need to be heard. And these include, first, the handling of the test and trace process locally, which proved most effective at that local level. Second, consideration of the wider public roles in relation to management of the pandemic, and in particular the relationship between central government, the NHS and local government. And third, the impact of COVID-19 on social care provision. And finally, local authority grant management, both in connection with the support arrangements for social care providers and also more widely for the local economy. But what should local authorities be doing now? The authors of the article say that it is highly likely that local authorities will be invited to take part in the COVID inquiry, so they should be looking now to collect and retain information about their roles at the height of the pandemic. Collectively or individually, we would expect councils, they say, to want to make sure that their side of the story is heard as part of the process of the inquiry. This will be an opportunity not to be missed, so gather your thoughts now.
Well, I'm sure local authorities will have a lot to say. During the lockdowns, local authorities could, of course, rely upon a remote meeting provision, and listeners will be more than aware of LLG's campaign, along with ADSO, taking us from High Court challenge through to the call for evidence and now our petition, which I'm pleased to say has smashed through the 10,000 signature mark. We continue to work with stakeholders on requiring the virtual meeting provision, with grateful thanks to the LGA, NALC, SLCC, Centre of Governance and Scrutiny, and of course ADSO. However, I want to say a special thanks to those councillors, lawyers, committee clerks and governance officers who continue to support us as we strive for remote provision. Indeed, a very special thanks to the Council who has proposed a resolution to support remote meeting provision and our petition with ADSO. Now, our long slog might start to be showing signs of paying off. As reported in the Local Government Lawyer in a parliamentary debate this week, Conservative MP Dr Neil Hudson had said to the Minister for State, "Volunteers who serve on our parish councils do an amazing job. In rural communities such as mine, there are significant challenges to attending meetings, such as transport, adverse weather, work and caring responsibilities. In the pandemic, we have seen that the virtual or hybrid format works well. Moving forward, will the Secretary of State look to allow parish councils to sit in virtual or hybrid format to increase and widen access and to help them work to the best of their ability?" Now, in response, the Secretary of State said, "If during the pandemic we had not allowed councils to meet virtually, Not only would we have impaired the effective working of local government, but we would never have known about Jackie Weaver, and the country would have been the poorer for it. I commend the work of parish councils and others. He continued, I am strongly in sympathy with the view that hybrid meetings should continue in order to ensure the maximum amount of efficiency. There is a case for saying that certain significant local authority meetings should occur with all councillors present, but I want to proceed with the maximum amount of consensus to reflect the maximum level of efficiency and, in particular, of sensitivity to those who serve in constituencies such as my honourable friend, where the rurality and dispersed nature of representation are important. Encouraging comments from the Secretary of State, I feel. Dennis, you've been looking at climate change plans and councils. How are they doing?
Helen, many councils still have a lot to do. Here's my report.
More than 1 in 5 of all councils in the UK have no climate action plan, research has shown. In 2019, Theresa May's government committed the UK to reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Since then, hundreds of local authorities have published plans to show how they intend to become carbon neutral. But analysis by the not-for-profit campaigning organisation Climate Emergency UK found that of the 409 local authorities across the UK, 84 still did not have climate action plans, while 139 had not committed to reach net zero emissions by a specific date. Climate Emergency UK scored 325 plans according to 28 questions grouped into 9 categories, including how well councils' plans would mitigate the impact of climate change locally, and whether climate and ecological emergency were integrated into existing policies. They took account also of community engagement, climate education, scale of emissions targets, and commitments to tackle the ecological emergency. Now, according to the analysis, the council with the most effective climate change policy was, well, you'll just have to read the article in the bulletin in more detail to discover the answer to that question. But I can tell you that although most local authorities have published climate plans, 38 district councils, 3 county councils, and 43 other councils in Great Britain and Northern Ireland have none at all.
Let's see if 2022 raises that figure. Now, before I go, just a reminder that we have a number of national lead positions and board director positions currently open for application. These include training director, 2 membership director positions, and deputy vice president. The closing date for all applications is the 14th of February, and do contact me if you would value a discussion about any of those roles. So, on that note, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me too.
Thank you for listening. Have a good week.